Greetings, fellow Americans. Welcome to Fireside Chats, State of Our Nation. I am your host, Susanna Tanner, candidate for House of Representatives 2026 and President 2028. So, looks like we're having a little bit of technical difficulties. I'm not seeing my stream on YouTube. So, let me see if I can change some of this. We might get disconnected. Might not? Okay, well. All right, so, just in case something did happen, we might have to just use this recording for the podcast release, episode release. With that in mind, again, welcome to Fireside Chat, State of Our Nation. State of Our Nation. For real. So apparently, there was a nuclear strike, or not a nuclear strike, I'm sorry. There was a strike on Iran at 3 different nuclear sites. This is very concerning for many reasons. Unfortunately, this is getting us into a world war. This is drawing us into that war. There should have not been a single strike on Iran from the United States. They did not attack us, and it is in our Constitution that we shall not declare war unless invaded, and we have not been invaded. Our homeland has not been assaulted as of yet. However, these acts of the military are placing us in immediate danger. Iran has the right to retaliate, and my very big concern is that they will retaliate on citizens on our homeland. So I'm pretty sure a lot of us can understand why this is concerning. I guess we're going to see what happens. However, I personally truly believe that, based off of our Constitution and our laws, that this was an illegal maneuver by Donald Trump. There should not have been any strikes. There are other ways to go about handling these situations. It seems that Donald Trump is more about fight, 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 instead of peace, peace, peace. So let's think of some ways that we can counteract these actions from our current administration. And hopefully we get some good ideas, because the last thing that we need right now is to fully enter a war. That's going to be very taxing on all of us, and it already is, even though we're not directly engaged in the Ukraine-Russia war. It's very concerning. Please think about these things. Let's move on to another topic, something that is really important for our nation to sustain, which is our infrastructure. Specifically, today we're going to talk about transportation oversight, maintenance, and repair. Oversight of our transportation system, especially motor vehicles, including semi-trucks that are transporting goods. Big parts of our infrastructure is traveling, is transportation, transporting our goods from one place to another, all throughout the United States, all throughout the Americas. Right now, truckers don't really get paid all that much, if you think about it. They oftentimes, I have discovered that it is often that an independent trucker ends up with a lot of maintenance on semi trucks. They pay by the mile. Most companies pay by the mile instead of by the hour. This is just a small aspect of our infrastructure in this area, transportation. Um, However, it's a larger part of our economy because without these particular modes of transportation, semi truck trailers, transportation vehicles for goods and services, goods especially, we would not have quite the economic value that we actually do have. Our ability to transport our goods to and from one place and another, that helps create a more stable nation. So making sure that our truckers are able to take breaks when they are able to, considering traffic, making sure they are paid a decent hourly wage, especially for wait time, such as when waiting to uh, load or unload their truck from uh, a warehouse, waiting in traffic, um, different types of stuff like that. These are going to be helpful to our drivers so that they can, well, not necessarily so that, it's going to be helpful to our drivers in that they will be able to perform their duties with more precision, with uh, more alertness. And driving a truck, you have to be alert. Driving a semi truck, you have to be alert. They are very large. They do not stop as well as a small vehicle does, a small personal vehicle. They're carrying oftentimes thousands of pounds on the backside, which really increases the danger to anyone else around if they're being reckless. If if a little or if a personal vehicle, if the driver of a personal vehicle is being reckless, it creates even more danger. Trucks can't stop that fast. They can't stop on a dime, not like a lot of personal vehicles can. I personally have respect for truckers. I know many people who have uh, been in that career field for quite a long time. So they're a major part of our infrastructure. Making sure that we understand these little but very major things about how semi trucks operate, how transportation vehicles like that operate. There's also things like our train system. Even though trains like Amtrak uh, are owned by corporations and such, or individuals, they also need to be maintained. We need to make sure that we don't have accidents like what happened in um, the key. Well, there's actually a couple of them. There was the major oil spill from the Keystone Pipeline that happened, I believe it was a few years ago, a couple of years ago. There is the train accident that happened in Moscow, or not Moscow. I'm sorry. Oh, now I don't have it. Just a moment. In Ohio, East Palestine, Ohio. Why I forgot that, I have no idea. In any case, East Palestine. This type of damage to our infrastructure, it takes a toll, not just on the rail system, but on the individuals who have to experience the aftermath of the accident. It is important for all of us to be able to maintain these lines of transportation. So not only should there be more oversight in the chassis that carry the shipping containers, making sure that those are always up to standard, up to code, that there's no damage, that they don't need to be replaced. This is very important. It's also important to have disaster uh, relief efforts that are already planned and in place for if such a disaster happens again. Now that particular train wreck was a pretty big disaster. It's caused people a lot of health problems, and including aspects of healthcare to within the disaster relief plan for such accidents is going to be very helpful for not just the individuals who experience it. It's going to be helpful for our nation because it's going to help us get back on track more quickly. We bounce back more quickly whenever we have adequate health care for such situations. There's also overseas transportation, making sure that we have adequate personnel, that all of our ships that transport material have functioning and up to standard equipment for navigating. We have seen a couple of incidences in the last couple of years where one boat completely destroyed a major bridge. And those types of accidents are not cheap to repair. They're not cheap at all. And if I'm not mistaken, that particular bridge is it's currently undergoing repairs and restructuring. I'm actually going to check on that right quick. The Francis Scott Key Bridge. That was in Baltimore. Now, I remember watching the video for that. It was pretty horrific, but it is also amazing at how quickly large structures like that can come down. Now, using this as an example, it's also important for us to have disaster relief, disaster repair plans for incidences like this. And it seems to me that those were not exactly in place for such an event. Unfortunately, it has been a slow going process. I do understand that there are things that are going to take time, such as getting permits to build and such. However, there are ways that we can speed along that process, especially for major transportation ways like that bridge. That was pretty amazing to see it in a very horrific way. You can't really fathom how something like that is going to affect you until you experience it for yourself. And I can tell you that the people who experienced this disaster in that area are probably still really worried about it happening again. I would be. Even if it's just in the back of the mind. Having emergency repair plans for bridge collapses, for roadway washouts, and even simple things like potholes that is going to greatly increase our bounce back from disaster, making sure we have those in place. But it's also important to it's also important to make sure that our uh, current structures, such as bridges and dams and such, that they are up to standard, that they're thoroughly inspected. And if they need repairs, we need to take care of it. Now, with repair and maintenance, and I have obviously spoken about that, it's important for there to be congressional oversight, more congressional oversight. Someone who will report to Congress on a regular basis what is happening in which areas, what projects are being completed, which projects are starting. It's important also to make sure that we have personnel for those projects. What my employment opportunities for this for what would be my administration would look like is having those opportunities come as temporary positions. You stay for a certain amount of time, you make a certain amount of money. And we can implement day labor into something like that. There are a lot of people with these skills who, for whatever reason, skills in construction, who, for whatever reason, decide that they can't do it anymore or they're not going to do it anymore. Sometimes it's retirement and such. But we can teach new people these skills, and making sure that we have the adequate personnel is going to greatly increase our chances of bounce back from any kind of disaster. It's going to decrease the risk to locals, regardless of where you're at, by honestly, by making sure that our roadways and our infrastructure, our structures are in good shape so that we can continue to travel back and forth to where we need to go. We can continue to transport our goods and services. It's important for us to keep that all repaired, all up to date, all up to standard. Some of the things that we can be diligent on is things like our bridges and making sure that our cars, that our personal vehicles are used in a safe manner while traveling. Some of this has to do with our major companies, but there's something very specific that I think should be addressed. And this is because it's summertime, actually. It is going to get warm in a lot of areas of the United States. We have a major desert in the United States. Most people don't really see it that way, but if you live there, you can definitely feel that it is desert region. It looks like the desert. It smells like the desert. Some of this, some of our areas of the United States are always warm in the south, but we have seen even warm temperatures recently in Alaska. So it's important to note that with these changes in our climate and how our weather is proceeding, we talk about this little piece of technology within the Tesla cars. Now, I had a friend of mine tell me that there was one really good redeeming feature about the Tesla that she was driving. And that is that she could leave her animal in the car and monitor the air and her dog from her phone while she was in a store, and be able to operate some of the controls like the air conditioning making sure that it stays cool in the car for an animal or for another person, like an adult that's in the front seat waiting for the driver to get back. That happens. This is something that should be standard in every single personal vehicle. Cars get so hot. Most cars are made to be well insulated, but when you consider all of the glass that a car has, you understand that that glass is amplifying the heat that's coming through from the sun. So making sure that we have a way to cool off a car, our personal vehicle, before we get into it, that would be amazing. It would definitely decrease the risks of uh, animals and animals and children being taken by the heat. And that is something that is so sad. It is so heartbreaking to watch. So let's encourage our car companies, all of our car companies, to implement at least this very specific aspect of the Tesla vehicle into every single vehicle. It shouldn't cost too much extra. It really shouldn't. And the reason I say that is because you can get the stuff to do so for those who like to, do it yourself. You can get a dash cam and get use your phone as like a remote control and such. These technologies have been developed so they can be used. But on that note, make sure you're not locking your kids in the car. Make sure you're not leaving little kids in the car. We don't need to lose any more kids because of something like that. We don't need to end up breaking into somebody's vehicle because they left their dog in the car and the dog is sweltering because there's no air and it's roasting in a car. They turn into ovens, and it's important to realize that. Cars, personal automobiles, they are part of our infrastructure. They're part of our economy. We buy and sell cars. We travel using vehicles. There's no reason why something like a simple AC monitoring unit could be part of every single car. Now there are some other aspects to the Infrastructure Repair Act. The transportation oversight, repair, and maintenance, that's only a small part. But they do interchange with the employment opportunities, especially employment opportunities that are for those who legally enter the United States. They are oftentimes willing to learn those skills, and I believe that it is essential for all of us to be involved. For immigrants who take the legal path to show that they are willing to be a good member of the United States. They're showing so whenever they go through the process legally. So why not give them the opportunity to show their skills or at least learn new skills so they can be a better part of our society? They already pay millions of dollars in taxes. I don't see why we can't implement such an employment strategy into our economy. I hope I've given you some things to think about. That is all I have for today. Thank you for your time, and may our path lead to peace and prosperity.